I'm recording.
All right, sounds good. So welcome everybody to Finance Committee meeting Thursday, November 12th. It is 3:15. We are still operating under the governor's executive order, emergency order that allows us to meet remotely. So there is no physical location. There is a posted Zoom link and a number to call. Of course, if you don't have that number right now and you're hearing my voice, you probably can't call that. But those things have all been done and hopefully you're able to join us. So that's check number one. So the next thing up is just a motion to review and accept the minutes from our last meeting of October 14th. Does anybody?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? We'll start with Norm Gupel.
Norm Kupel's a yes.
Yes. And Michelle Clark.
Michelle Clark is a yes.
And Steve Chamberlain.
Yes, sir.
And Rob Nato is a yes. So just a quick review of last meeting for folks. We spent a fair bit of time looking at the Hudson School District model and talked about things that we might be able to adopt in some fashion to improve upon what we're already doing. So we discussed adding to our budget bulletin I guess you would call it a programmatic category by building. And we went through and looked at what that might be. And I think we're going to see a sample of that today. So thank you guys for doing that. And we also talked about some improved readability by shrinking our categories from 5 years, or our time period from 5 years to 3 years, which should give it more space. And then maybe a little bit on the formatting side, just to make sure that things aren't overlapping, but we'll get there when we get there. So that was last meeting. And today we're going to talk about the annual warrant articles and a little bit about the change in law that allows us to set aside up to 5% of any money retained, which is the Article 10, correct?
You got it.
And interest on the bond and what we're going to do with that. And also a bit of a discussion about establishing a technology reserve fund. And I got a couple of questions towards the end, just real quick about draft of the next budget and whether that will be something we review here or if that just goes straight to the board. We'll save that for the end. So if we want to get rolling with the warrant articles.
Sure. You want to do that, or do you want to show just a sample of the report first? Whatever you'd like to do first.
PS5 guy, what do you want to do first?
Whatever you want, Rob. I'm totally fine. I'm here. I know Michelle has 4 o'clock, right?
Well, that kind of got changed because the governor kind of said we're in a different state right now. So I've
Oh.
very, very high today. So I changed my plans after.
Okay. I was respecting your schedule. Okay.
No, I appreciate it.
We'd still like to finish by 4. But anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which we will.
There's no problem with that though. Rob's running the meeting.
We'll be at the beach by 4.
There you go.
So let's look at the budget sample from Harold Martin School, because I
Sure.
did have some questions, but I think I understand it.
Oh, I'm going to share my screen. And sample. Oh. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay.
We see the words of your name sharing, but
All right, let's try it again. Share screen. No?
There
Yep.
we go. Yep.
Oh, great. So thank you to Michelle. And I can blow it up a little bit. So this is just a school. And if you look, so there's grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, regular ed, what we spend in subs, regular ed social. Is that social, Michelle?
yep.
And art and English. And if you go, there's proposed, and these numbers are just still rough. They're still rough, but I really wanted to look at the form more than the substance.
Yep.
Yep.
And then, so there's proposed in 2021, what was budgeted, what the increase is, the actual and budget, and all the way going back 3 years to 1920. So last year, this year, and next are the 3. and it lists, and if you keep going down, it provides OT, co-curricular, guidance services, general testing, psych, preschool, boom. Technology, 26,000, down 36,000, all that fun stuff. So this was Michelle's attempt, our attempt, because there's a mouse in my pocket, to try and look at a school by, as you said, Rob, department-ish programmatic areas.
Yeah, I think this is what we were talking about. So Michelle, this is an accounting question, and I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but so the increase says 420, like why does it say that?
Well, because we haven't put the people in yet.
So
we just barely, we haven't made that dump yet. So this was just what's in there right now, which is not anything to do with personnel right now.
Yeah, so this is just a stage again, but do you like the form? You like the information you're getting, and Michelle's working hard on it.
Yeah, I think this is great. I think this
is exactly what I like about it, Steve, is it compares to what we actually spent in the previous year. So people can see, you know, that was a big discussion, if you recall, last year in the budget season, there was that question, and this is exactly what they're looking for. I think it's great. Is this just a sample, Steve, or is this your actual adjustment to rate?
It's just not, it's not there yet. Personnel is not in. We don't have all of it. So this is just, Michelle has been working hard and want to make sure that we give you something that you like, but expect something like this with everything dumped. We call it right after the personnel dump.
Okay.
I think it's.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. Thank you very much. I think people will be pleased to see.
And one thing, I don't know if we put a caveat on the reports when they are final, but one thing to understand is the current year, we're in a pandemic. Last year's budget, some of the year we were in a pandemic.
Right.
And so that's accounts for why we don't spend some of the things that we might have had in the budget. And so I just bring it up for nothing more than, I know we all know this, but just, I don't know how you capture that.
Right.
Right.
Somewhere, because while it doesn't explain for everything, it can explain for some things.
And just saying, this is a report from the Cognos system that Michelle tailors, but dumps through, and she'll have this for middle school, Maple Street, and high school. Cool beans?
Yeah, perfect. Cool.
Is this okay to share to kind of get a feel, or not yet?
I hesitate because the numbers are so not there, and people are going to look. If I could X out all the numbers, but I think we'll be okay. We're going to have it soon, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need numbers. Can you send me a blank copy?
I don't know. I don't know.
Who do we want to share it with at this point, Norm?
I mean, they're going to see it on the tape if they watch. I mean,
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point.
I would hate to get it out and say this is what we promised or this is what we said, because it's just not there yet. It's just about form.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think that's good, Steve. Good point. Great job.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So can you see the agenda now?
Yep.
Want me to just keep sliding to the warrant articles?
Yeah.
So, and these are notes from Michelle's and my discussions, I think, really all summer about when we talk about the warrant and the articles based on legislation. So, I'm going to Michelle and I have been advocating with Dave Luno, Mel Myler, and that group for retainage for school district funds for a long time. If you don't know Michelle's history, she came from the town side, and the town has the ability to retain for fund balance year to year. They don't have to turn it back. So I spent some time with Neil. For example, the town is required, Neil said, to keep 5% of the total tax. So the town has more than $1.2 million in reserve that they can use to soften the blow on tax years, to stabilize the tax rate. They have to keep at least 5%. And up until 2013, we had zero. And then through Michelle's advocacy, I'll even say some of my advocacy with Dave and Dave's experience, he brought to the legislature the ability to retain up to 5%. And so That's HB 155, 8. It changes it from 2.5 to 5% retainage. And if you want to see the, let's see, there's the law right here. It's 158 by the 2020 legislature. And it changes it to 5, right? You see the 5%?
Yep.
That's the law change from 2.5 to 5. And right now we're at 2.5, Michelle, which is what, about 393,000. So if you just go out a little bit, Rob and Norm, we would be able to retain up to almost $800,000. Now, it doesn't mean the board has to. The goal is always, Michelle and I always want to give the board options, give the board flexibility to make decisions. So we would advocate that we have an article in what Michelle has learned and taught me, that if the article said up to the amount required by law, we wouldn't have to go back. But I just looked at Article 10 in 2013. It said 2.5%.
Right.
So, and I talked to Tom Barry today, and we'll talk with DRA about writing the language. But our recommendation is, I can say that, right? Michelle, you with me on this? That the
Absolutely.
language would be permit the Hopkinton School District to retain up to the total amount allowed, permitted by law. And that way the town will never have to go back. You know what I mean? Like if we had that language in 2013, we just wouldn't have to go back, but we specifically wrote it 2.5%. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does.
So Michelle and I would both recommend, and like the support of the Finance Committee, to recommend that we include the warrant article. And the board, again, the board doesn't have to, they can keep with 2.5% if they want. But the law gives the board flexibility. If you have a lot left over 1 year, they can retain up to 5%, which I think in the goal always has been to stabilize the tax rate. And so having $800,000, now that was still less than, remember the town, then they should be okay with this because the town has 1.2 million at a minimum, sometimes more than that. So it's a House Bill 1558, changing it. Really, it's a simple change from 2.5 to 5. Our language would be to the greatest amount permitted by law, so that schools would never have to go back and do this again. And even if they shorten it, say the legislature goes back to 2.5%, you don't have to change anything. Permitted by law is universal language.
So if one year the board, let's say this warrant article passes, and the board says, you know what, we only want to do 4%. We would have that leverage to do 4%.
Yep.
Okay, just gives us the ability to put more away as opposed to what the previous warrant was, which was
Exactly.
2.5. Got it. Yeah.
And I think Michelle and I think Hopkinton School District was one of the first school districts that enacted this warrant.
Mm-hmm.
And the town that I live in never went to the town for this warrant, and I think that's very difficult. But we've had it from the very first year, and learned how to account for it and report out it and retain it every year. But I think it's a great fiscal tool to help stabilize the tax rate and do what's best for the community.
Yeah, I support this, Rob.
Yeah, so just a quick recap for my brain and people who might look at this later's brain. So if we have an overage, a surplus, we've got basically three options. We can expend it on other items if it comes from something that we can do that with, or we can put it towards fund balance, or we can put it towards this Article 10. Those would be our three options.
You got it.
This allows us to expand Article 10.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And it's simple. If you go back to the meeting in 2013, actually is Article 10. So that's how you can easily.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's why we call it.
Maybe line it up. It can be Article 10 again.
I'd love that. That way we wouldn't have to change the language.
Yeah.
I think we have to do that, Rob.
I think that'd be good.
So that's the first one. Everybody okay?
Yeah.
The second one is another article that Michelle wanted to make sure that we remember to address. Is right now we've had $5 million in the bank, actually, right? We got a check for $5 million. That's in the bank earning interest. And then soon we'll have, next summer we'll add to that. Some money will be out, but we'll get another 4.9 something. And in order to use any proceeds from that on the project itself, it has to be authorization by the annual meeting. And most towns do authorize the funds within the building project to stay within the building project. And we would recommend that. We talked about this a little bit. I forget night, was that Tuesday night? All these nights go together. And and I think Michelle was perfect. She used an example. If we get $10,000 and that takes care of another room of flooring, that's just a great use of the funds and it stays within the project. But we need authorization from the annual meeting to be able to do that.
So just, I mean, because these questions will come, the other option would be to take those funds to put it towards
Fund balance.
tax rate, fund balance, or to
Right.
new Article 10.
Yeah, you could do either.
But I think you and I, Michelle, you and I'd like to keep it within the project, right? And spend the money.
Oh,
for the project.
absolutely. And I mean, we're not going to talk about a lot of money. I think I said 5 to 10,000. So on a tax rate basis, that's going to be
Nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
like 3 cents, 4 cents, something in that range. I mean, and it's not going to be. And again, we don't like to have 1-year wonders. So this would be a 1-year wonder in essence, for the most part.
Yeah, if 16 cents is 100,000, we're talking about less than 2 cents on the tax rate, but that could do maybe 2 rooms, you know, and have an impact and save long term. So I think it's, I really do think it's stewardship of this project and keep the proceeds within the project.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just
Yep.
having the conversation that people are going to ask that question. It's also a hedge against future, you know, money that would have to be spent anyway on capital improvement things.
You got
Yeah,
it.
I just bring it up as, you know, just more of the fact of, again, we try to stabilize the revenue too. So
Right.
if we're going to have this just 1 year bloop, then the next year we're going to have a shortage of the revenue if we go and use it in the tax rate.
Yeah, and you know,
You could definitely put it in the Article 10 like you talked about, which wouldn't affect anything, but you know.
and to spend it now when the project is underway, and you know, if the flooring guys are here,
Exactly.
it costs us less money while they're here than to
You got it.
do a
Absolutely.
one-hit wonder down the road.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
The third one, and this is a, you know, as you know, the process, Michelle, Matt and I, Michelle, we meet with all the department and we spent some time with Matt. It's a wonderful problem to have, but Matt originally had a process to go 1-to-1. And that process would have been a year at a time, or like a 4th grade and a 7th grade. And then you gradually and incrementally roll out and also replace. But what we did was we dropped all 10 grades at once, 730 devices. So Matt's looking and Michelle are looking ahead that in 4 years, we may have to replace 730 devices. And that would be a big lump in one budget. So if we do a capital reserve fund, we can do the contribution similar as we would have done. And instead of putting that in a fund, so we can gradually build up and gradually expand as we go forward. So this is a solution to a good problem of buying so many devices at once, but saving over the next 4 years. So it's not a big hit in 4 years if we go blank. If we don't do anything in 4 years, when all those devices are gone, are at its end of life, it's a big hit to the budget. I don't know if that was clear what I just said, if that made sense.
So it seems to me it's like a CIP plan, but for technology.
Exactly.
So this is
Yeah.
going to be a rolling replacement of what we just purchased, so it doesn't all come at once. My question is,
Exactly.
you know, how is it in Bode? Do the kids pony up at all for their equipment or no?
No, but they do in Bedford. So Rob, Bedford, it's a you buy the one-on-one in Bedford. In Bow, I think in 7th, Jesse got it in 9th grade, I can tell you, and they last 4 years. And at the end of the year, we can either turn it in for recycling or we can buy it for $1. We have, just so you know, we have no interest in keeping that device beyond 4 years.
Right.
It's Jesse's 3.5 years in, and it's already slower. But Bedford, and I can get you that. Matt and I talk about that. The Bedford model of purchasing, they're the only ones that Matt and I know of, and I don't know if Michelle knows of other, but Matt and I have talked about the Bedford model of purchasing a device. it's interesting because I had to buy Jesse a graphing calculator
Right.
that was on sale. It was usually 120. We got it for 90 or something. You know, Chromebooks are only about $60 more than that now.
Yeah.
You know, so if that's something you wanted to look at, I'll get you that model. So you can look at Bedford. But that's the only one that I'm aware of that does the purchasing as you just described.
Right. I just think it'd be a good conversation to have as we continue to talk about, you know, revenue and
Yep.
cost sharing in other areas. This might be one.
But Matt would also, the only thing that we have to make sure is we're clear on the language, because there are things that we buy in the technology world that last 5 years, and some things you buy that last less than that. So I think the language is like, Matt would also like to save for switches, you know, other big, not just the devices,
Mhm.
but other big purchases over time. Like I had a meeting with him, and just where is he on security? He always wants redundancy, right? Right now we can't, like we lost the internet one day, like last Friday, I think we lost the internet at the high school. And if that's a $10,000 problem, that's a problem, you know, switches. So he's fine, but I think the language here is for, we'll get it very clearly, but it's not just for the Chromebooks, it's also for other major purchases over time.
And this would be similar to the other ones we have. They'd have public hearings.
Right.
So it wouldn't just be that, you know, the tech director and the superintendent decide and nobody else is included type thing. You know what I mean?
It really is the solution to buying 731 year and replacement over time versus one hits.
Steve, when Matt asks about other things, is he talking, you know, predominantly about hard goods? Like when you say security, like, are we talking servers or are we talking services?
He's talking servers and that the subscriptions we have to pay every year. He's like we don't like save up for those.
Right.
But it's yeah, he can speak to it, and I'll have him speak to the budget process, but it is about switches and servers and making sure we have he always wants redundant supports, especially like if there's something that it would take him a week to get, we have to have it on hand because our systems can't drop now for a week. As you know, I'm right. I mean, we couldn't go without the internet in any of our buildings for a week right now.
Yeah. Go into panic mode when it goes down for 45 minutes.
Exactly.
So did we clear on this? So let's say we contributed like 15,000 every year or something like that. And then you guys need to do a withdrawal. You guys would do a posting like we normally do of 7 days out.
Yep.
And then we'd hold a hearing before the board meeting, and then people would come and say, you know what, I'm all for this. And then the board would then approve a withdrawal of $50,000 to buy X, Y, and Z.
You got it.
Do other school districts have such a thing like this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Technology, capital. Yep. Now for years ago, we used to buy on a lease. And so we would buy 150 and pay over 3 years against that lease. But Matt didn't, and Michelle didn't, and I guess we all didn't like paying the interest on that lease because that could be like 10 devices. So we implemented that in the budget, but this is really in response to the 730 devices we bought over the summer.
Michelle, help me with and this is me thinking out loud, but my math and my logic might be way off. Let's just say if kids were to contribute 25% of the cost annually, right? So then we're into a 4-year cycle where, I mean, depending upon where costs go, and they usually fall, not rise in this market, we would be able to replace that in 4 years. So you know what I'm saying?
I do. I just have to think, because we can't just put money into a capital reserve account. It might have to be, if it's that kind of a model, I think it's more of a special revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's going to be a cost sharing. You could still do a public hearing and everything, but it would be more of that kind of a model. Because a trust fund, you have to have a specific amount to be added, and it goes to the voters.
And it's a good question, Rob, because I think you and I talked about this last year. I did ask, we can't have a technology fee. Tom said, but could you buy a device over time, or is that something that they would work out with the vendor? Like, say it was PC Connection, and that we were asking them to pay, that we create PC Connection and they pay every year to them over time, because we can't charge a fee, Tom said,
Right.
on technology. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tricky. It's, you know, we don't ask kids to pay for textbooks, and this is essentially the modern version of a textbook.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some things to think about there. Okay.
So our hope is when, usually this will be the second budget meeting, is we bring the full warrant, right, Michelle, I think? Second or third, depending on where we're at, the full warrant. And so we you know, when we get there, you can speak to your support or concerns about these articles when we start putting together the entire warrant as we get to March. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The last thing is just a quick notice. So posted is so on Thursday, a week from tonight, we're going to have a public hearing at 5 o'clock, and it's about accepting funds, the 46,000 from CARES ESSER and the 191,000 called the Supplemental Public School Response Fund. That's the 200. So we've been advised, I think I said this last meeting, to have a public hearing, and then the board would vote to accept these funds. And so it's totaling about 230, and we will have, Michelle and I will have a presentation of what the planned use for these funds are, in additional application as well. So just getting the finance committee a heads up that there'll be a public hearing next week about this.
We can wait for next week to explain this, but is it my understanding that we have to use this 191,000 before December 31st?
Yes, December 30th.
December 30th, actually.
It has
December
to.
30th?
For example, the only expenses that are eligible, for example, Michelle bought $6,000 worth of wipes.
Yep.
Those wipes are here and they're being used as we speak. That is an eligible expense for the Supplemental Public School Response Fund. The Chromebooks, and we hope they come by December 30, but if they come February 1st, they are not eligible for the Supplemental Student Public School Response Fund because they are not deployed. It's paid and deployed by, like, Matt Stone, trying to increase our equipment for synchronous learning, bought 10 or 15 or 20, I don't know exactly the number, of screens. Well, those arrived today. They're being deployed before December 30th. Those are eligible, and Michelle's already included them in the notations for these funds. So that's the federal law, because as the CARES Act and some of these funds expire after December 30. They don't exist.
So you could retroactively activate everything that we've purchased for COVID and apply it to this.
Exactly. So Matt ordered 60. We did get 60 Chromebooks in. Those are all right. Those are all going to this because we're using those Chromebooks because of COVID. We had a Siemens come in and to do a report on all our devices because of COVID. We're making that part of this application process as well. So Michelle, that's one thing. Michelle has many strengths, but one of her extraordinary is she has documented every single expense from the very beginning related to COVID. So she was very well prepared for this application and for this work. And you'll see that next week on Thursday.
And
Right.
then,
I'll tell you, we're not turning any money back.
No, we are. So the 191 is by December 30, but the 46 is by September 30, 2021. So
Right.
Michelle originally had plans for the 46, has now aligned those to the 191, which was recommended, by the way. The DOE said, please do that. Take all the money you had in the ESSER and put them towards the 191 so you can use that money.
So if I spend 80,000 or 90,000 in COVID expenses, let's say March, and we apply that to this grant, we get the money back. Does that money just go back?
We really didn't spend a lot, Norm. We really didn't spend a lot in last fiscal year because we had encumbered things, but nothing came in. And quite honestly, we had no idea what we were going to be for a model. for school. So we really didn't do a lot of major purchasing until after July 1.
Yeah, in summer.
But how does the bookkeeping work? Like if, so I give Rob a refund basically on what he purchased. Where does that money go? How is it booked in the, is it unreserved fund balance? How does it work?
What do you mean a refund?
It
Not a
goes to,
refund.
so it pays these bills.
Pays it, okay.
So we had a bill, it's now going to pay those, it's going to reimburse the district for paying those bills.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a revenue somewhere, and I actually have to get clarification whether this stays in the general fund, if they want this staying in the general fund, or if they want it to go in the federal projects. Because in
That's what I want
essence,
to
it's
know.
going to be a revenue for 191, an
Mm-hmm.
expense, I think I have 191, $26 and some odd cents or something ridiculous.
But you know what's really good, and I said this, I'm really excited, is the Harold Martin School preschool room was going to come out of maintenance trust, but we're going to rescind that action item next week. And it's going to come out of this, because the reason why we had to do it so quickly, because we couldn't have teachers and kids in a room in COVID without circulation. So that $18,000 now is shifted to the 190, the Supplemental Public School Response Fund. Perfectly legal. This is perfectly appropriate, by the way, because we did that. If you were at that public hearing, we had to do this because we could not have kids in a room without circulation, right? Because of COVID.
Yep.
And so we're going to rescind. And so there's $18,000 more in the maintenance trust. And part of the meeting next week will be rescinding that action item. I mean, it's fine. We didn't get the check, right, Michelle? We never got the check.
No, because we never got a bill.
Right.
And we don't get a check until we get the bill. And so, yep.
So we're going to have an action item rescinding the Hopkinton School Board Superintendent's recommendation to rescind the action item taking out of the maintenance trust due to the Supplemental Student Response Fund, which is awesome.
Great. Yeah, no, this is, it's free money. I
So
mean,
we
that's
were-
really what it is.
And that's one thing, having BPS and the Northern Peabody on, I mean, they're going to have this all done and operational by December 30. And if we weren't in a building project, we wouldn't be able to do that right
No.
now. Get air circulation working in school. So in a sense, the building project saved us another $18,000. You with me? Because if we didn't have people on site and stuff, it would have been hard to get everything ordered and ready to go because a lot of schools are trying to do this.
Right. All right.
Anyway, I just wanted to get the finance committee aware of that going into next meeting.
Thank you. Steve, I think that was the last thing on the agenda. I did have I guess this is sort of like next meeting stuff. In terms of the presentation of the broad budget, how do we fit into that? That's my question.
It's a good question. I'm just a little concerned about the timing. We don't have many days now between the meeting and presentation. So I don't know if you want to meet after, because by the time Michelle has to, she met with people today doing more personnel.
Yep.
And then she creates the budget. I get the budget, then I cut it, create the superintendent's budget. And then there's usually not much time between that and the presentation, to be completely honest with you, Rob.
Yeah. So when does the budget bulletin come out? Does that come out as part of these beginning steps, or does that come out later?
Usually
Later.
after the board adopts the budget, because that represents the board budget.
Okay. So maybe
So my thought process was for the budget, we usually start off with the big spreadsheet. It's called, it's page 2. But on top of that, we'd have these other reports like what Steve showed.
Right.
And then the following week would be a revenue sheet. And then the following week, I think, right, Steve, is like the trust and everything. So it's like the warrant article listing and stuff.
Yeah.
And then by the end, it'll be wrapping it all up in a bow with the big budget bulletin. So that, yeah, is a bit of ways.
So the support documentation, what we just will happen at the expense, my presentation is a slideshow of philosophy and big hits. And then we walk through the big spreadsheet, and we can walk through this year, we can walk through the program, the building documents and then walk through the big spreadsheet. Does that work?
Yeah,
Can I ask a quick question, Rob?
sure.
So you guys are still gonna, we're still gonna have that paramedic budget that we had at Maple Street. That's still gonna be the plan, to have that where we show the cost of each location that we discussed. We're still going forward with that sheet.
Has e-finance, have you been able to solve those problems on the,
Nope.
so if we can, we'll have the building ones that Michelle just showed you, but the programmatic budget, actually as a budgeting tool, we're fine, aren't we, Michelle? It's the encumbrances. Yeah, so you'll be fine. I'm sorry, you'll be fine.
And I can print a report, but it only right now gives expenses. It does not tie in the encumbrances, and that's what they're trying to fit in.
But yes, we will have that as a programmatic, as a budgeting tool. Yep. And so you'll have, if you want, you'll have the big spreadsheet, which is overall macro.
Yep.
You'll have the programmatic budget, which you can take a look at on, one sheet, and then you'll have building budgets.
Yeah.
So the big spreadsheet was the thing that we looked at, or that I popped up a couple meetings ago. The broad categories, is that what you mean when you say the big spreadsheet?
It's the one page, it's by function.
Yeah.
It's the big thing, and we can have those ready. I mean, well, I can show you the sample. I just can't pop it up right now. But yeah. But you're gonna have, you'll see, I think you'll see from the very first night the impact of the finance committees on changing materials, the very first night of the budget.
All right. Just a curiosity question. Do we have a lot of early retirement requests this year, or
We
how's
do.
that looking?
We do. We may have 6, Rob.
Yeah.
We budget for 3, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. And we have that, that usually actually is part of that first budget presentation, because the board has to accept them, and that, because then we put them right in the budget, as you know. But what's
Right.
interesting, Rob, is if there's 6, as you know, there's 3 who get it and 3 get preferential treatment the next year.
You gotta love that.
So you might want to retire and not be able to for 3 years.
Yeah.
You with me? Isn't that interesting?
I guess my question would be is, what's the appetite for more than 3, if that's going to help us?
Yeah, and we have that discussion with the board when we look at what the fund balance looks like, and as you know, the expense of the actual retiree. Because right, if you're at 64, it's a lot less financial hit than you are if you're at 55.
Right. Yeah.
As it should be. So if we have a lot of 55ers, that takes up a lot of the budget space.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of the 64ers, that takes up less than the budget. That wasn't very articulate, but I think you knew what I was talking about.
I know what you mean, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I look forward to having that conversation. So it's-
November 15th is the last date, by the way. So we don't really
Right.
know. I don't usually talk too much about it until the 15th, which is
a couple of days.
Monday, right?
Is it
No, actually it's Sunday.
Sunday. So Monday will be the last day, and then we can start figuring it out, because as
Yeah.
you know, everybody is compared to each other in that process.
So for our next meeting date, do you want to go in between school board meetings on the 10th?
And well, in December, there's no in between school board meetings anymore.
Oh, okay.
We go every week in December.
You bring joy to my heart, my friend.
But that doesn't mean we can still go in the afternoon.
That's good.
Or we can
Well,
go on a different day. We can go, it's up to you. So the
Well, that's what I
presentation
want.
is going to be the 3rd, just so you know. So the budget's going to be presented on the 3rd.
Yep.
And then, do you want to meet on the 9th?
Sure.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
3:15?
Yep, sounds
Yep.
good.
And that, Michelle and I will be close to ready to the second one. And yeah, if you don't mind, the 9th?
Sounds good. All right, it's 3:56. We've Candy Garvin's been poking around, so see if she has a question. She only has 4 minutes to ask it though, because then it's going to be 4 o'clock. So
You want me to allow her to talk?
she's over there. Oh, she's got her hand up. Hi, Candy.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
I didn't want any of you to feel lonely.
Well, thank you. It's nice to have someone out there.
That's all I have to say. I'm glad that the air system for the preschool was able to be funded by the COVID stuff. I am very excited about that. Nice job.
Yeah, well, it was because of the state money, but I remember you mentioned that before, so we did it, Candy.
I know, it was like a miracle.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all that you're doing, everything that you're doing.
Thanks, Candy. Have a good
Thanks,
afternoon.
Candy.
You dear, bye-bye.
You bet.
And
All right.
Norm, we have a 6 o'clock tonight.
Yes, and I'll keep you posted about that, Rob. We're gonna be talking a little bit about the dates moving forward for the meeting. The board has to decide the date, and then the moderator takes over that specific avenue.
Oh, okay.
So,
This was good. We banged it out in
Sounds good.
45 minutes. This wasn't bad.
There we go.
no,
A little
very
time.
happy with what I saw today. Very happy.
Thank you guys very much.
Michelle, thanks for all your work.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rob,
Yeah,
Norm.
thanks, Michelle. It was a
Thanks,
lot of
everybody.
work.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
We'll see
Bye.
you when we